Digress, yeah.
Well, we had to catch up. So, all right, we're going to what we're going to talk about tonight was born out of just a couple of recent experiences. Basically, well, you know from the title, it's about speeding up or making your Elementor website faster. And you know, a couple of years ago, when Google came out with their speed metrics and using that as a ranking factor, it became, you know, everybody got really worried about speed, and we all started scrambling to try to speed up our websites. All these tools came out, and Elementor was getting banged on because it was, you know, so heavy with all the JavaScript, and it was just, you know, we've all experienced that. Well, several months ago, I was watching a YouTube video on the WPTuts channel with Paul C out of the UK, and he had this guy on talking about this plugin called Perfmatters, which was an optimization plugin. And it was interesting, and I put that kind of in the back of my head. And then I got this job to build a site, and the guy who's sort of the decision maker likes everything big and bold, and he likes all kinds of movement. And well, I'll show it to you. Animation, and we ended up having just tons and tons of animations. Okay, so
which, you know, is probably the worst thing to put on your website.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, what?
I said, which, you know, is probably the worst thing to put on your website.
Yeah. So, you know, if I'll reload the page, you can get a sense of, and then you scroll down and you've got all this shit happening.
Oh.
Yeah.
And it only gets more so as you go through the site.
So, Carrie, I have to ask you, did you try to convince him, you know, to tone it back a little bit?
No, well, actually, this was not one of my direct clients. I do a lot of work for a marketing firm, and this was one of their clients. And I don't know how cognizant he is of or cares about speed, but I cared. And after I was building this, I thought, man, this site's gonna, I mean, it'll be okay, but it's not gonna be anywhere near quick. So then I saw on WPTuts, they had another video where the guy optimized a generate blocks, generate press website, and then he optimized a Elementor website. So I got a better understanding of how it worked. And so then I put the two together. So I'm going to try this on this site and see how it works. And so when I first did the speed tests on it, I think on the mobile, it was like 30 something. And on the desktop, it was like 70. And I took, so after doing the optimization, the mobile got up to 87, which is not 100, but for this site, that's not bad. And then for the desktop, up to 99. So, and there's still some tweaks I could do, but worked pretty well. So what I thought I'd do is, there's lots of settings or toggles or whatever. So I thought I'd go through them and quickly give an overview. And I have some links that I'll put in the chat after, you know, at the end of the call, to where y'all can go if you're interested, go take a look at those videos. The plugin we're talking about is Perf. It's short for performance. Perfmatters.
So Carrie, I have a question though. Are you using this in conjunction with a caching plugin?
No, it doesn't do caching, but I use WP Engine.
Okay.
And WP Engine has caching built in. A lot of the nice hosts have it.
Well, and that's my, I'm sorry. That's my point, is that you have to understand that Perfmatters is not completely a single performance plugin.
No, it's
got-
just to optimize the code
Yes.
mostly.
Yeah.
So anyway, we get into the back end. Once you get it loaded in, and it's under settings and Perfmatters. And your first page that you see, there's different tabs. There are all these toggles. And these are mostly not terribly heavy things, but the guys who wrote this plugin are just like anally retentive about it. I mean, some of these toggles just take out a couple of lines of code, but they want to get rid of all the unnecessary code. And so, one thing I want to point out too is if you're not sure what something does, these little question marks, if you click on it, it takes you to the documentation. Pretty good documentation on every single thing. So the disable emojis, WordPress has some code in it that has emojis and associated JavaScript and CSS and stuff. If you disable this, people say, oh, I want to use emojis. Well, if you disable this, the website, this is my understanding because I don't use emojis on our websites. But I have it on good authority that if you disable this, you'll still be able to use emojis. They'll just use your system emojis, the ones that come on your operating system, Mac or PC or whatever. And evidently, this is actually a fairly heavy payload because it's got a library that it has to load. And then disable the dash icons. It doesn't disable them here, but there are some plugins that use dash icons in their icon library. So if you disable this, pay attention to your icons if you're not sure what it's using to make sure it doesn't go away. You can disable embeds. This does not affect YouTube embeds, does not affect Twitter embeds and those kind of things. It's more of like if you put a link into somebody's website or an article in WordPress that's on WordPress, sometimes WordPress will make a little card that has a link, a little visual thing. Well, that takes up bandwidth and speed and stuff. Disable XML RPC. This is I just click on this to read what it's about. Not very many tools use this, although Jetpack evidently does. So if you use Jetpack, don't disable that. Remove jQuery migrate. If you haven't updated your plugins and themes, I was running jQuery migrate on all my sites for several months, and then once the warnings went away, I took it off. But actually, there's no jQuery migrate on this site, but I went ahead and put it on. High WP version. It's just a tiny little bit of code, but it's a little bit of a security thing because if somebody's going into your website, they won't know what version of WordPress you're running. This is an obscure one. Evidently, there is something called Windows Live Writer that people used to use, like Notepad. I'm not sure it's still around, but it was something that people used to use to write code, posts or code for WordPress. Windows Live Writer, and that just makes that possible. And then there's more descriptions of what they do. I'm not going to go through all of them, but you can take a look here. See if there's anything. One thing I would say when it talks about removing global styles, we're talking about styles from your theme, I believe. And So, and one thing I will mention too, while I'm thinking about it, is that, close this. If I can put that. Okay. Okay. Put that there. One of the interesting things that I learned is that some of the biggest offenders in slowing down your websites. Now, according to Google Page Speed Insights, that Google Fonts, Google Maps, Google Recapture, and Google Analytics. If you have those all slow down your site. But yet these are products, and the way they're written, a lot of them could be written better to not do that. But it's like they're different departments in Google, and they don't talk to each other. So we'll deal with this in this plugin. One thing also I'd mentioned that when you're in the process of doing this, if you have Elementor add-on plugins, like essential add-ons or ultimate add-ons, just make sure that you don't have a whole bunch of widgets enabled that you're not using. Just disable them if you're not using them, so that it doesn't load any of that stuff. Sharon brought up the point that you'll need a caching tool, because this doesn't do caching like WP Rocket. And you can use WP Rocket in conjunction with Perfmatters, because WP Rocket has the caching, but you don't want to have the same settings set. Like, you don't want to have defer JS set on both of them. You want to do it in Perfmatters and leave it off in WP Rocket. But most of the good quality hosts now, I think, have their own internal caching. I already told you about these tooltips. One of the things too that can catch you off guard, it takes a while to get used to doing, is that when you're making these changes, you make a change and then you save it, and then you go to look at it, you need to log out and then look at it in an incognito window after you clear your cache, because the fact that you're logged in changes the way the website works in some subtle way that I don't fully understand, to tell you the truth. I discovered this when I was working on this, that I had made some changes, and then I looked at it. I had logged out and looked at it in incognito, and the changes I made weren't working. So I found out that. Also would highly suggest that if you don't already have one, get a CDN, or have the hosts often have CDNs. I guess one of the most popular ones is Cloudflare. In fact, WordPress is moving over this month to using Cloudflare as their CDN. If you go through these out of the box, you won't see any WooCommerce options, but if you have WooCommerce installed, you will have options for WooCommerce. So, go through and we just check off the toggles as we see. This disable Google Maps. I don't have any maps on this site, so I could do that easily. Or you can disable Google Maps, and then they have a thing called a script manager, where you can go in and say, disable it everywhere except on my contact page. So it's not, because sometimes these things will load on every page and you don't need it. So anything else of note here?
That's just to mention the WooCommerce thing. That's what when you do have WooCommerce installed, That's what this plugin does for WooCommerce, because yes, if you run WooCommerce, you know, it does load everything, and where really you only need WooCommerce on your shop and product pages, your checkout and your cart. So
Right.
what this does, it helps to take all of that bloat out
Yep.
of the WooCommerce area on all your other pages.
So have you used Perfmatters before, Sharon?
Yes, I use. So yes, I can tell you the full details of everything I've been through with Perfmatters and WP Rocket and my host.
Uh-oh. You can do a whole meetup on that, I bet.
Oh my God, yeah. It is a learning experience, especially if you have, like I do have a very large WooCommerce site that I have to manage. So, and I'm constantly having to, I guess, retweak everything to get the speed back up, because it'll be good for a month or so, and then I see it just disintegrating again. So
Yeah. So go to the assets. Okay. The script manager. This is turned on. And if you wonder about the script manager can be accessed from up here. And you can go through and turn things on or off. And then let's say that you wanted to turn that off, but then you could say location everywhere, or disable it only on certain pages, or for certain users, or certain devices. You can explore that. I haven't dug into that terribly deeply yet, so, but that's there for you. And let's see, so JavaScript, defer JavaScript. What defer basically does is it kind of pushes it down to the bottom of the waterfall. I'm sure you've seen in the GT metrics, or even in Google's page speed insights, I think, but I know for sure in GT metrics, you get a waterfall, and it moves it down to the bottom of the waterfall. And then you have the option to include jQuery. It's suggested to be very, very careful with that, because there are some plugins that have jQuery dependencies. So that very possibly or probably would break something. If you wanted to exclude some JavaScript from deferral, you put the name of the file here. And then there's delay JavaScript. Now, what delay is kind of interesting is delay and defer can work at the same time. How delay works is it looks at it finds everything that is below the fold and delays it. Any JavaScript delays it, and then we have a delay timeout. It's the timeout is set to 10 seconds. Although you can go in, there's a filtering thing where you can go in and change that. But most people aren't going to open up a web page and just sit there and look at it. They're going to start doing something. I'll show you how that would work. Let's do the inspect here. Mobile. Let's get off mobile. Okay. So I'm going to go to the network, and I'm going to go to JavaScript. Pull this up just a little bit, and I'm going to load this over or something. Here we go. Reload the page. Okay, see right now it's only loading one JavaScript file, lazy load JS. But watch if I put my mouse on the screen. See, all of a sudden, boom, all those JavaScript files load in. But until I do something, or until 10 seconds go by, it just loads that very first one. and then boom. So that's pretty cool. And same thing with CSS, I believe. Let's reload this. Now these are kind of essential CSS. There are some that you can't get rid of. These files that look like this, that say post in front, these are dynamic. They're generated by Elementor, and they have to do with theme template parts, Elementor from the theme builder, and they're dynamic, so you don't really want to get rid of those, but they're not very big, 2 kilobytes, 2.6 kilobytes. And then, let's see here. Let's reload the page. So we got a lot of junk going on there. So anyway, so defer puts it at the bottom of the waterfall. Delay keeps it from loading until you do something, or a certain amount of time goes by for stuff that's below the fold, that's out of the viewport. You can put exclusions from the delay, just like you could from the deferral. The CSS, you want to remove unused CSS, and Perfmatters, I think, just packages it up into, I think we saw that earlier, that it, like a minified CSS file just for those items that are necessary on that area that's in the first viewport. They recommend you have options of taking the CSS and put it inline or a file. They recommend to do with a file. They say it's faster. You have the style sheet behavior, delay. If you remove the style sheet altogether, it's not gonna have any styles at all. Not 100% clear on what async means. Obviously asynchronous, but I don't know. And then this is where it got interesting, because I had, as we pointed out, there's all these animations. And so I had, oh, wait a minute. I had made these, I made some optimizations, and then that was when I realized that you have to be, when you're logged out, because if I was logged in, I could even go to a incognito window and everything would work fine. But if I was logged out and then I looked at the page, those animations didn't work. They just, everything was static. And so I reached out to, Perfmatters is owned and run by two brothers. And so far they have a really good reputation for quality support. It's only them that does support. They don't have like a big bank of people who are doing it, from Bangladesh. The guys who are there to help you are the ones that, particularly if you talk to, I think his name is Brett. He wrote the code for the plugin, so he knows it inside and out. So anyway, I told him, I said, my stuff, I think I've done everything right, but when I'm logged out, they don't work. And he sent me back saying, oh, in such and such can happen or goes on when that happens. Can you give me temporary access so I can take a look? So I gave him access, and he he put this exclusion, and then everything worked. And I had forgot to mention that when I had seen the problem with the animations, I also noticed that my header wasn't sticky, or this area here. It would just go up. And I couldn't figure that out. So I asked him, I sent him another question about that. And I had figured or thought that these, just by looking at the code, these would probably affect that, but it still didn't work. And then he said, well, you need to do that because these all feed off of this and it has to kind of go together. So, and this all happened in one day, in the same day. He got back to me same day. So that was cool. If you're doing lots of changes, it's good to clear the used CSS and save and clear your cache. And then, test it. Preloading. Preloading basically puts the whatever it is you're preloading at the top of the waterfall. And you can preload images, you can preload fonts, and in here I've preloaded Font Awesome, and I've preloaded, what is that? Oh, this is the this big background image. But you can put all these different, you can preload all these different kinds of things in here. And then there's pre-connect, which I haven't messed with. But there's an interesting thing similar to that we'll get to. And then there's lazy loading. Lazy loading, how would you describe that?
It
Lazy loading.
It loads your images after your content.
Well, yeah, and it also doesn't actually fire it to load it until it's there to be seen.
Correct.
And you can exclude, usually they have exclude leading images, meaning the ones that are, that you see when the page first loads. And so you can play around with it 1, 2, 3, because the logo would be the first. Some themes, as I understand it, generate press, I think. Actually, in the DOM load has the your regular logo and maybe your mobile logo if you have one right underneath it. So that would be 2, and I put 3 because there's really only 3 images that are that show or have the potential to show right off the bat. There's that one, this one, this one. This is interesting. Well, let's see. Yeah, we can get to that in a second. I exclude from lazy loading this IT Nation white logo 200 because that, reload the page. That's actually a graphic right there. So I had to go back and add that because this was added, this little flyout was added recently. You can lazy load iframes and videos. It can create YouTube preview thumbnails. There's some other, there's some themes that do this. I think Avada will actually create a thumbnail for your video. Point being is if you have a YouTube video running or on your website and you have this activated, it'll look just like it normally would, except nothing happens until you click on it. When you click on it, then YouTube kicks in, but it's not loaded anything until you click on it. The threshold, you can tell Perfmatters how much of the page do you want to be worried about lazy loading. I haven't got this set on anything at this point, because this particular website, and I didn't design this per se. I mean, I did, but I was patterning it after their old website, which was done similarly to this. And this funky header thing, which I don't care for so much, but that's what they wanted. But they had really big hero images. I don't normally use hero images that big, but.
Gary, can I point something out to you?
Sure.
Where it says M&A has its advantages.
Yep.
That header, there should not be an apostrophe on its. That's bad grammar. That they didn't.
You're absolutely right. I can't believe that the grammar police didn't get that.
Yeah, and I had another question too. If you wouldn't mind, just quickly showing us again where you, like, if you have a certain plugin that's only going to appear on the homepage, and you want to make sure, like, I don't know, a testimonial feed, and you want to exclude it from other pages. Where was that in the general settings? I'm like blanking on that. I know you showed us that a couple of minutes ago.
No,
Do you mind
that's
just doing that real quick?
It's in the script manager. You can see it up here.
That to me would be that would be the main bonus here. I have a colleague who said he works with this like on every website,
Yeah.
mostly for that reason, to exclude certain things from appearing like with every page load apparently.
Yeah, exactly. Let's see if I
Okay.
see here.
It's under your assets where the script manager is.
Let's see if this. Let me see here. No. Oh, I'm back. Let's see.
So Carrie, right here, are you doing it page by page, or is this for a specific area?
Well, I was looking for Google Maps, but I don't find it right off. But let's say that let's say that I didn't want to run. So I cut it off, and I didn't want to run it everywhere. I could disable it everywhere, or I could disable it on certain posts, or only on posts rather, or only on pages or landing pages.
If you were to click pages, then you could select which pages. Right. If you click that little box which says pages, will it?
Well, I don't see an option for that. Although you could. I don't know the answer to that. I would think that I know it can be done. I don't know if you'd use the regex for that, but yeah. So anyway.
Okay.
Okay. So let's see. I'm monitoring. I'll let you look at that because even the brother, well, it tells you what it does. I haven't tried that yet, and I have always made a practice of doing this, but evidently a lot of people don't. Is having not putting the dimensions of your images in the image tag, like width and height, and that helps the page build itself. If you don't have the dimensions, that things kind of move all around until they get settled. But if the page, when it's loading, already knows that this is going to be 500 pixels wide, 250 pixels tall, it'll leave a space for that to load into, rather than it just, once it loads, finding its way to where it's supposed to go. Hopefully I explained that in a way that made sense.
That's also a Google thing too.
Yeah, it's
when-
like a page
Yeah.
shift or
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah, I was trying to remember that. Thanks. But
And
yeah, it's in one of the Google requirements as well.
yeah, and this is just a little thing that they threw in because they liked it. Evidently, some people really like it. It's when a page appears, that it fades in, but it's a very quick, smooth fade. You hardly even notice it. This is interesting. CSS background images. The lazy loading, it somehow or another, for some reason, background images are not caught when you tell it to lazy load images, evidently. And so what they've done is, down here, there is a class that you can add. It's to a background image. I'll put this in the chat. I can find my way back to chat. I'll show you how that works. Put that class on a background image, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Let's edit this edit with Elementor. And this image was already, well, see, this image, it's not really an image. It's a background for this column. So you can see it's here. And then under advanced, you just put that Perfmatters lazy CSS background right there. And then that tells Perfmatters to lazy load that particular image. And evidently, there are a lot of people that use lots of background images. And if they just had lazy loading on, it wouldn't work right because it wouldn't know to get it. So that's pretty cool. And let's see what else. Okay. Then there's fonts. Now this can be a big help in terms of your loading. Again, it's one of those. It's a Google product, but it can take up a lot of time, and then you're depending on, as your page is loading, you're depending on the site to make a connection with Google and for Google to respond and send it to you. And I don't know if you've ever had this happen, but I've been loading a web page, probably one of mine, but I know I've seen it before lots of times, that the page is kind of spinning and you see down the bottom left-hand part of your browser, it says waiting on Google fonts or waiting on Google. What this does, or what you can do, is, well, you could just disable Google fonts and then it would just use system fonts. And that's the fastest. But, a lot of people like nice fancy fonts, so probably not a lot of people use that. Display swap is kind of a little cheat. It starts to load the system font, but right at the soonest possible moment, it switches it over to the Google font so that it just the space is taken, but by the time it shows up, it's turned into a Google font.
What if you have custom fonts loaded?
Don't know the answer to that. Do you, Sharon?
I'm sorry. What was the question? What if you have custom fonts loaded?
He had custom fonts.
Oh, okay. So I think that's where you can put them in your assets. If you have anything that's custom, you can put them in the asset area.
Is there
Could be.
something that
could be
preloads?
preloaded. Could be a preload font, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
do that DNS prefetch. You can put stuff in there.
Yep. Yep. Well, there's an interesting thing here. Is it here? Yeah, I must have missed it here. Ah, no, where did it go? There's a, look at my notes here. Let's see.
While you're looking at your notes, Carrie, there was, I think you hit something that I wanted to interject, but I forgot to ping in. But on your background images, the reason why the lazy loading doesn't capture that is because they're CSS background images, right?
Right.
So to load the CSS background images, the browser needs to build the DOM as well as the CSS object model. So to decide, you know, if it's going to display those items. So that's why those items don't get lazy loaded.
Right. Right.
So that's why you see, you're getting that.
Makes perfect sense. Perfect sense. Let's see. Okay. There was I'm looking for something called instant page or something. There we
Oh,
go.
you were there, yeah, and under
I
preload.
didn't talk about this. This is actually pretty cool. What this does when you have this enabled, as I understand, that when you do this, because this gives the impression that your site is super fast, faster than it really probably is. Because if you have that enabled and I go to do this, the browser's automatically already loaded in the information of where to go. I don't have to click on it and then it goes and gets it. It's already, as to use the term that Sharon did, in a sense, has prefetched everything it needs. So that makes the things faster. So that's pretty cool. Lazy loading.
Sorry, Carrie, I'm gonna say one more thing too.
Go right ahead.
For your, sorry, let me get my thoughts right. So for these items that you want to prefetch and stuff, you really have to run either GTmetrix or something that actually shows you where you need to improve your matters, because it's going to show you the scripts that are actually slowing your site down.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. I mean,
it's very tedious work, but it's well worth it in the long run if you just pay attention to your reports.
Yeah.
And look what's slowing you down. You can optimize all of it.
Yep. And in the current reports that we have, we don't really, let's see.
And always remember that, like, he's got page speeds insights here, and I mentioned GTmetrix. All tools have different algorithms. They're not all going to be the same.
No, and they change from minute to minute. I'll get a really super result and I do it 2 minutes later and then it sucks.
Yes.
See, look here, we got a 50.
Right, but that's mobile view. Go to, look at your.
Right, but it was at 80 something.
Yeah, your mobile view was? Yeah.
Yep.
Okay.
It was earlier today, that screen, I think I showed you a screenshot.
Yeah.
Or actually I took a screen.
But you're right, because I have the same results all the time. In the morning, it's one thing. In the afternoon, it's another.
This was taken this afternoon.
Yeah.
I haven't really changed anything since then.
Yeah. So look at his report down there. You see it says metrics. So these are the things that you're gonna. The first content painter, you see that's in red. So that's where you can do some improvement. And then the third one says largest content. I can't talk, but those are areas where you see it's going to give you suggestions where you can improve it. And it actually will show you the script files if it's loading.
Yeah. Well, this, for instance, this is what Sharon's talking about. It shows you the files, but we can't really do anything about these two. Because these are those dynamic files we talked about that
Yes, yeah.
Elementor generates. Although I'm not sure.
Oh, but there's oh gosh, can't think of it right now, Carrie, but I just spent a whole day working on Elementor stuff. There is a way to do that, but I can't remember it right now. I'll have to go to my notes. There's like a whole section on Elementor, how you can help things out.
Okay, well, if you find that or see it in your notes, if it's a link to a web page or you
I
want to,
think so.
I'd love to see that.
Yeah, let me go to my notes and do some research.
And but anyway, one other thing that this may be my imagination, but it seems to me that when you are logged out of WordPress, there's these scores get better, which kind of makes sense. But I'm just doing it again to see, because they change every time. It's different. Sometimes it's really close. See, now it's 74. It was 50. Nothing changed, except whatever's happening between my machine and Google, whether it's a network traffic, whatever. So you always have to do multiple tests. So then we were on the fonts. So then this is loading the Google fonts. Wait, putting the Google fonts locally on your machine, or it's actually in a Perfmatters directory on your website. So rather than having to go out to Google to get it and have it come back, it's already there. So that makes it load a lot faster. You can put your CDN URL here, the prefix. If you've ever looked at a URL of something that's using the CDN, it'll be this. A lot of times this looks kind of gibberish like, but it's in front of the actual asset. I'm not doing it here because this particular website is hosted on WP Engine, and they're using Cloudflare, and it's a special thing that they've set up with Cloudflare to where it's seamless. It just automatically does it. So there's nothing to put in the CDN URL.
Carrie, let me add. So the reason why you want to do that local, because a lot of this Google fonts and stuff, it's going to another server, so it's hitting a server, and that's where you get pinged whenever these load times. Every time it hits the server, that's a ping against you. So that's why you want to try to get as many things local as possible. And so that's why this is there.
Yep. So that's good. And then I guess if you decide you're going to change your fonts, you can clear them and reload them. So, and then of course if you had a CDN, these settings would apply. And analytics, you can load analytics locally. Oh, one thing, I'll go back to fonts. Evidently I'm sure that y'all have heard about Google being in trouble in the EU about privacy because of the data they collect. And so, Google's analytics is coming out next week. I don't exactly know when in October, but they're coming out with a new, you can get it now. It's called G4, G-Tag, Google Tag G4, I think it's called, analytics. And it's more privacy oriented. But you can actually, and evidently, I don't know how, you might know, Sharon, Google Fonts has a privacy issue too. I don't know
if they do.
If that's because Google can tell what computer's getting it or
yes.
So by loading the Google Fonts locally, you're improving your website's privacy. And then on the analytics, you can load analytics locally. You're not having to go back and forth from Google Analytics back and forth. And I thought I did this, I hooked this up yesterday or the day before, I can't remember. And it occurred to me this morning, you know, I didn't check to see if that's working. And a couple hours ago, I went into Google Analytics and yep, it's working. And you pick which script type you have. Sometime in the next several weeks, we'll switch it over to this kind, because it will, that's what the new Google tag will be. And you can anonymize the IP if you want, which is part of, I think, what G4 does. And then there's these other little things that you might want to do. I'm not sure why you'd want to put the CDN URL in there, but and then if you're using Monster Insights, it has enable AMP support. It's my understanding this will probably go away because the word is that AMP is going away. I guess it was a flop or something. In fact, on some of Google's documentation, they've removed references to it. And
yeah, oh my God, that was such a pain though. I mean, has anybody ever used AMP?
Oh,
I
what
see
was
Brian
it?
smiling back there.
2019, 2018. I don't remember when they came out with it, but they would, you know, there's a lot of talk at a WordCamp, and it was like, man, that seems like a whole ton of work for.
It is. It was.
And so I actually just said,
Brian, why were you smiling? Did you work with it?
The same reason Carrie had mentioned that I saw that WordCamp here in Atlanta, and I dug around further into it, and I was like, well, yeah.
Oh my God, it was such a work hog.
yeah, absolutely.
I mean, as if you didn't have enough to do, and then you apply AMP and thinking that it's going to make your mobile site better. And oh my God, it's like too much work.
Well, and since then, I think AMP has.
No, it hasn't improved. If you're going to say improved, no.
No, I was trying to think. I can't. Well, with all the tools that have evolved and come along since then, it's sort of
weeded itself out.
It's just not. It's not useful or pertinent anymore because there's easier ways to do what I think they were trying to do.
Exactly.
So, and let's see. One thing that's interesting and to bear in mind is for the CSS, posts share, well, it might be better because with Elementor, it might be better to say post types share the same CSS. So if you have, you have, well, your regular post, like, it might be a blog or news or whatever. The CSS that's in your single post template is what's being generated or read. And it's the same for every page, unless you have some kind of unusual stuff in there. And on one of the videos, I'll give you a link to, the guy goes through and shows you how to do that. It was on the Generate Press optimization. Guy, Kyle Van Dusen had built it was a blog, and it was this was in the Elementor version. Because Kyle Van Dusen went away from Elementor partly because of this, how slow things were getting because of the bloat, and had gone over to Generate Press and Generate Blocks. But he still got sites running that were done with Elementor. And so this guy went into there and one of his blog posts had some little extra, a little bit of styling or something. So he was able to go in and basically what he did is he cleared the CSS, and when he loaded the blog post that had the unusual CSS in it, that was in addition to the regular CSS that's in the post template. And then he loaded that one first so that it would work on the other ones that were using the template CSS. Because originally you do it the other way around. If you do it for just a blog that's just using the template CSS blog post, then when it gets to that one that had that extra stuff, it's not going to understand what to do with it. So it kind of breaks. So anyway, posts, and then if you have a custom post type like a team member or a property or a car, or whatever you might do, those would use the same share the CSS. But pages, the CSS is generated per page, which kind of makes sense because pages can be all different, have all different looks. I mean, for this one, like that page is similar to these pages, but this page is very different. It's got just different layout. So anything else?
Hey, Carrie, I think before you leave this, it's important to note that if you're going to turn this on, to disable or get rid of any other Google Analytics plugins that you have installed. Because if you don't, you're going to load the script twice, which could skew your data.
Right. Yep. And also, if you like this website, not this website, another website that I was working with, putting setting up Perfmatters earlier today, it had auto optimize on it. And I had run tests, and I found that was about as good as anything, without having to get all kinds of craziness that some of these tools have. It even did better than WP Rocket, at least in the instance I tried it. But if I'm using Perfmatters, I don't need auto optimize, so I deleted that. And so, having multiple tools doing the same thing, Sharon's right. You don't want to do that. So I think that's why they have this in here. Use Monster Insights, because like you're saying, they would probably fight with each other if you didn't have that. So
yeah, and let me this is kind of well, it's not really off topic, but so I think everybody has heard of WP Rocket, and then the other one that Oscar recommended to us a while back is Nitro Pack. Is that right, Oscar? Nitro Pack?
Yep.
And from experience, I want to tell everybody, I've tried both of them. I worked with both of them, both WP Rocket and Nitro Pack, trying to see which one gives the better performance. And in Nitro Pack, actually, it's free up to a point. You have to pay if you go over, I forget what they call it, your cache limit or something. And so, and especially for large sites, Nitro Pack is not going to be the optimal one. I definitely went back to WP Rocket, and based on an advice of a guy that does this all the time too, because he relies on WP Rocket, because Nitro Pack can cause some interference with your performance, thinking that it's doing great and giving you great reports, but and I can attest to this, your site's still slow.
well, that's
That's why I quit using it. My
What's that, Oscar?
recommendation.
well, that explains what I heard a couple of weeks ago on some I don't know. It was two guys on YouTube talking about WordPress and performance things. And they mentioned that NitroPack got into some kind of trouble because they were cheating in some way.
Yep.
Oh, that explains it.
Yeah,
I
they
didn't
called
know
it.
that.
It was they referred to it as black hat optimization.
Oh, yeah,
right.
I'm telling you.
Stay away from NitroPack.
Okay.
It was my recommendation. It was pretty new when I
Yeah,
saw it. I was stunned by the results.
yeah,
But over time, we discovered that how it really worked.
yeah.
And it's not advisable to use it. I mean, I quit using it on every website, and I removed it from all the websites that I had installed.
Yeah. Yeah, so be
Yep.
careful, and especially
That's
like,
all.
and with
Don't-
I'm sorry.
Karen, don't even mention that I did recommend that, please. Don't even
Okay,
mention
I'm sorry, Oscar. I just didn't want to hurt your feelings that I went away from it.
No, you did well. Don't worry.
One more thing I was going to tell you guys too, and well, and you will learn this when you're working with this, but you know, be sure to, like Carrie's been doing, showing you that, you know, there's really instructions with those question marks, and they're really good. And WP Rocket's the same way. They've got really good instructions. But a lot of people, you know, they just install a plugin and do the bare minimum. But if you're really looking to optimize your site, go to the instructions and read them, because there are some things that cause conflict. Like I know Smush has an issue with, well, actually, I think that was NitroPack, but I can't remember. But anyway, so, you know, just read the instructions, because the more you find out about how that plugin is going to work with what you have installed on your site, the better you're going to understand these reports.
Yeah, and I think with this one, a lot of what I've shown is pretty straightforward, but there is a learning curve when it comes to dealing with delaying the JavaScript and CSS, particularly the JavaScript, figuring out which JavaScript you need to delay.
That was going to be my question. I mean, how long have you played with this to kind of master it as you have? Because, I mean, it looks pretty good.
If you
Getting to the nitty-gritty of it, it's complicated. I mean,
yeah,
there's
well,
a lot of knowledge.
I would say if you devote yourself to like a couple of days to setting it up, like Carrie said, you know, you want to go, you want to try, you know, your first settings, you know, like your first page was general. You want to check all those settings that Perfmatters kind of recommends, and then based on what your criteria is, and then, you know, go and check your report, see if they've improved or if you can see any difference. If you dedicate some time, you know, like a couple of days to go through this and really understand it, that's all you need. If you don't have that kind of time, I would just like set yourself like a 30-minute schedule every day until you get through all of it, because it will help you.
Yeah.
Perfmatters has a tutorial.
Sorry.
Perfmatters has a tutorial
Yes, it does. And it
on
also
how to go
has,
through and set it all up.
right. And it has a really good starting. It has a WordPress performance checklist. I don't know if y'all have seen that,
Yes.
but it's got really good documentation.
Yeah, and they work on it all the time.
Yeah.
And but before I forget, I'm going to put some links in the chat.
It's just that if you need it for very many sites, it gets expensive quickly.
Yeah, unfortunately, the
Well, with Perfmatters, you can at least write, I don't remember what it was. But
three, you can do 3 for the first 3 sites for 45, for whatever it is, $49.
well, I got unlimited sites for like 124, and then I got
124.
Yeah.
I think it's, yeah,
125 per year.
yeah. So
Last time I looked, it was 249 for.
We love Judy and would do anything for her. And
what? Who said that?
I don't know.
Well, right now-
I'm saying it right now on the page,
Right now,
on the pricing page for unlimited sites, sites, it's
It's
140,
124.
124.95 per year. Unlimited sites, 1 year premium support, 30-day money back guarantee, multi-site support.
Yeah,
Buy
and
it
it's,
now.
and
Yeah.
normally it's 150, so.
Yeah. And so anyway, take a look at this, the chat, and there's links. The first one, he goes through, well, actually chronologically, the one underneath, the one that's how to configure Perfmatters was the first one that was done 3 or 4 months ago. And basically what he does, he goes through and explains every setting, and it runs about 2 hours. This one is the one that's where it says Perfmatters founder shows how he optimized Elementor and blocks websites step by step in real time. He took 2 separate sites and went through and optimized them. One Generate Press, one Elementor. And it's just very helpful to see it in action. So I encourage you, if you have the time, to take a look at those.
Can you do as much in Generate Press as we can do in Elementor?
Well, it depends on what your customers want. A lot of the things that you can do with Elementor and all the Elementor add-ons, you're limited because it's blocks. But from what I've heard, I don't think it's shaken out as to who's doing the best job. Generate blocks is, I hear a lot of good things about. I hear about Kinsta. Is it called Kinsta blocks? Probably. There's another one called Quickly that's storming onto the stage.
Oh yeah, all the different builders, bricks.
Everybody's trying to find, it's like when page builders were coming out, that, there was all kinds of page builders until Elementor began to dominate. And I don't know if there'll ever be a dominant one for the blocks, but
Okay, well, let me just insert something, Carrie. So remember that Generate Press is a theme. Okay?
Right.
It's not a page builder.
no, and you got to have Generate blocks to go with it.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it is a block-based theme. So if you like building the blocks, then yeah, I would say go with it. But I think those of us that are used to the drag and drop for Elementor, now the block base is also drag and drop too, but I think I hear from people that more with the blocks that they just don't understand how it's built. So
it's not visual hardly in any way.
Right.
I mean, it kind of goes back to, when themes first started coming out with what was essentially page builders built in, like WP Bakery, and then bigger themes have their own proprietary versions. You can lay things out and do stuff, but you can't really see what you were doing. And then a lot of them have recently come out with front end builders but it seems like a lot of those are kind of buggy.
Yeah.
I read a couple of things that said that Generate Press didn't have the bloat that Elementor does.
Oh, absolutely not.
And so the sites are much faster.
They're faster out of the box, yes. But you can't do.
Well, you could say Elementor's faster out of the box too. There's nothing in it.
Well, yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, if you hear your site, nothing there, but it's fast.
You got a point.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, when I say Elementor, I meant the hello theme.
Right.
I mean, yeah, you could run that out of the box too, and it's going to be Zippo.
Well, I have customers that ask me for complicated things, like, let me go back. This is a site that I built probably 5 years ago, but about 6 months ago, they came in and they said they wanted to have a slider with blog posts in the header.
Love it. I love it. That's cool.
And this was built before I ever heard of Elementor, before Elementor probably existed. And it was used with the Avada theme. And so I had to figure out, I don't know if I could have done this with blocks, but this is an Elementor. Actually, it is a Elementor custom skin, Elementor custom skin loop.
Oh, yeah.
Going forward, Elementor is going to have its own loop. We'll see how good it is. And it's a slider. And I don't know if you could ever do that in a non-brick block-based theme.
You can do it in HTML and CSS. I've done that, but it's a lot of work though.
Oh
you
yeah.
gotta hand code.
Hell, doing everything like by hand, because that's how I started
Yeah.
years and years ago. Anyway, that's the kind of things that people ask me for, that it's like Elementor is extremely handy to do. So
yeah.
So you have one Elementor element in this website that's built on a different theme? Or did you change it all over to Elementor?
no, Elementor is not a theme. It's a page.
I understand.
Okay.
I understand, but you built the site originally in Avada theme.
Yep. And it's still Avada.
And so you just stuck this one Elementor element in?
No, there's more than one. This is done with Elementor, and these little guys are done with Elementor, and I think that's about it.
So you just added the Elementor page builder to Avada.
Yeah, and Elementor Pro and L Custom Skin.
Yeah.
But I've had pretty good. I don't know that I've ever run into. Well, years and years ago, I got to the place where I just was building themes on Avada, because if you try to have a different theme every time or build custom themes, it's a headache, is it?
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And
tell me about it.
one thing that when I said that, it reminded me of something I wanted to say earlier, that if you use the same kind of tools like Elementor, and maybe you have a certain subset of Elementor add-ons that you use, you will learn what to include in these exclusions. Because one other site I started working on today, I use these exact same selectors on it so that it didn't kill the animations, and it had a sticky header. So if you start building sites that have similar tools, then this will become easier once you learn this tool. It's like Wyatt, I found that it was helpful to, eventually I got to a place where if it was before I started using Elementor, all the sites I were building were done in Elementor. And at some point I had like 27 sites in Nevada. And you use Avada, you're using Avada all the time, so you don't have to think about it almost. You know the territory, rather than you get Infold or Salient, which I have a couple of sites that I inherited, and I've got to go hunting for stuff because I don't know where that is. So it's good to find a package that works, a stack, I think is the term that most people use, a stack that works, and stick with it.
And so what exactly are you excluding this style sheet and these selectors from? Minimization?
From being removed.
Ah.
So
how does it determine what is unused?
well, it goes back to when the page loads.
Yeah, when the page loads, you can see, everything in your performance tests, what's loading if you don't have them, optimized like he's done.
Yeah,
You can
I mean,
see
you
what's
can
loaded.
see. I'll show you something. One more. We're getting close to the end here, but I want. This is kind of interesting.
Yeah, you can use
Turn
the
on the
insights.
inspector and get this down just a little
The
bit.
lighthouse. You can use the lighthouse, I think.
Let's see. Let's do JavaScript, and then I'm going to reload the page. Okay, you see, there's only one JavaScript file. Now, if I wait long enough for the timeout, the rest will populate. But if I take an action like move my mouse or go to press a button, boom, they all drop in. So when it first loads, it's only loading one JavaScript file.
And all the rest have been delayed.
Yep, and they will kick in either when the user takes an action, it just moving the mouse, going to press a button, something, then they'll load, or if a certain amount of time goes by. And the default right now is 10 seconds. If that's too long, and I'm not up on that yet, but there's some filters that you can go in. I think that's a PHP thing. That you can, and they have them in the documentation supposedly, where you can add it. I think you add it to your functions.php file.
So you can adjust the delay.
Yeah, you can change it to 6 seconds or 8 seconds. You don't want to take it to 1 second because the page is not going to have enough time to do its stuff before everything starts
Right.
for each other. So,
And it does the same thing with the CSS.
Yes. It will
Yeah.
do the same. Mhm.
and the CSS, and there's more CS loads than.
Yeah, I have to tell you, I was astonished at how much, even though I was using Hello theme, sorry, I keep saying Elementor. Even though I was using a Hello theme, I was astonished at how much CSS and JavaScript files on WordPress alone was loading.
Yeah.
I was just so astonished. I'm like, where are these files coming from? Why does it need all this stuff?
Yeah, and that's a lot of this stuff, these options. That's
Yeah.
turning off a bunch of this WordPress stuff that a lot of people might not need. And of course, you're free to unturn it. So I'm looking forward to learning to make the most of this, and I'm glad that
Hey, Kerry.
you're playing with it too, Sharon, because we could trade notes maybe in a few, in time after we both get really familiar with it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
This question is for Kerry and Sharon that have experience with it. How much does it really work out of the box? I mean, you install it, activate it,
Nothing. It doesn't do anything.
doesn't do anything.
You
So
install it.
you
Yeah.
have to go
Doesn't do
through
anything.
the process of configuring it.
Yeah.
There's not kind of a
But
set of
also,
let me ask. There is not kind of a set of default for Elementor or for this or for that or.
Nope.
no.
It's a good idea to provide, to ask these guys to prepare a set of files, a set of defaults for Elementor.
Yeah, we could do that, Carrie. We could, look at that video that guy did and kind of compare notes. And like I could do the WooCommerce side of that, and you could just do a straight website side.
Yeah, I could do that. Yeah.
And we could, that's a good idea, Oscar. But Oscar, I can tell you, like, what I did is I just did the general first on one day. And this was on my WooCommerce site because I had, excuse me, one second. I had pretty much got WP Rocket all set up, all configured, had it pretty well, getting a good score with WP Rocket. But, I was still getting some of the performance reports were showing areas I could still improve. And that's when I was reading about Perfmatters. So I went and installed Perfmatters. And the first thing I did was just do the general setup. And just doing that already hiked up the score.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
If you just do the fonts locally and do some clear up the unused CSS. That'll make a big difference. And believe it or not, the Google Maps evidently takes up a lot of, because some plugins or some themes load the Google, even though you may only use it on the contact page, it loads it on every page, the code for it. It's just not using it. So you can say, just do it on one thing. But to your question, Oscar, the guy, the two brothers that own the company and that built this, the guy who is in the videos that I gave you links to, he addressed this. He says, out of the box, it doesn't do anything. It's like,
Yeah.
you break your site yourself. No, we're not going to break your site.
That's what I was gonna say.
Yeah, but fortunately, almost all these are, if you do something and it breaks it, just undo it.
Undo it. Yeah.
It's not like you're having to write and speak.
Even WP Rocket recommends that, test one thing at a time first before you just enable everything. Because if you enable everything, you're not going to know what actually broke your site.
Yeah. And one final thing, I said it before, but I'll reiterate it because it's not something you're in the habit of doing. At least I would. It took me a few days to get in the habit of. When you're checking to see how your site looks, log out.
Yeah.
Because it affects the way this works.
And use an incognito window.
Yep. No caching or anything like that. But
Not the incognito window I do, but logging out.
yeah.
I don't do it.
So Sharon and
Thank you for the
Gary,
recommendation. It's important.
in your opinion, does it speed up your site better than anything else?
So far.
Well, and remember, this Perfmatters is done in conjunction with, if your server has the caching or if you have to install the caching.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't do caching. You're gonna have to take care of that yourself.
Okay, that's no problem. I'm doing Cloudflare, so that's okay.
That's great. That's great. But all righty. Well, we're at the end of our time. I want to respect your time and my wife's time.
I'm glad I got my last question in.
Yes. So I appreciate all the good feedback and your input, Sharon and Oscar and Brian and Steve, and Dennis.
I want to say hi to Juan. He's
Hey,
been
Juan.
very quietly.
Hi, thank you very much. I'm listening to this very good information. I didn't know, and I see that I have to learn more because you have to do a lot of configuration with the plugin.
Yep. So it's there's the old guy, I forget who it was. Well, the old clock on the wall says it's time for us to close. So appreciate everybody showing up. It was good to see y'all again. Thank
Hey,
you.
Oscar, take
everybody.
Very
care.
good.
Brian, for
Thank you
helping.
very much.
Thank you, Kerry. Thank you,
Good
Ryan.
evening.
I have one comment for Juan. Just have one comment for Juan. He's like God. He's everywhere, but no one has seen it. He always leaves the picture in it.
Yes, and he's always got the ocean behind him.
Yeah, right. Makes me jealous.
Okay, guys. I'll
Okay,
see you
everybody,
later.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Sharon, I sent you an email